With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yolana Weeks.
Our top stories.
St. Kitts and Nevis ambassador highlights women's crucial role in peace and disarmament at OAS meeting. Warning signs of financial scams and steps to take if you are caught.
Swain Evelyn heads the Culturama 51 committee. Antonio Abernathy Liburd lauded for his sterling contributions.
Guyana opposition leader blasts government's response and walks out on debate on border. Trinidad and Tobago president calls for progressive laws. Internationally, Harvard sees rise in foreign enrollment with international students from over 200 countries.
Now, the details.
During the regular meeting of the Permanent Council of the Organization of American States OAS held on May 21, 2025, Her Excellency Jacinth Henry Martin, Ambassador of St. Kitts and Nevis to the United States and Permanent Representative to the OAS, delivered poignant remarks commemorating International Women's Day for Peace and Disarmament on behalf of the Federation. In her address, Ambassador Henry Martin underscored women's indispensable role in advancing global peace and security.
I join colleagues who have expressed thanks to today's panelists for their important and informative perspectives. The delegation of St. Kitts and Nevis is honored to join in commemorating the International Women's Day for Peace and Disarmament, a moment to reflect upon and to amplify the vital contributions of women in fostering peace, advancing disarmament, and shaping a more secure and just world.
Highlighting the courage and leadership exhibited by women worldwide, the ambassador saluted those serving
on the front lines and behind the scenes in the global pursuit of peace, whether in negotiating dialogue, leading communities toward reconciliation, or serving with professionalism and distinction in security and peacekeeping missions across the globe.
She emphasized that women's participation is symbolic and essential to achieving sustainable peace.
Women bring inclusive perspectives, transformative strategies, and a deep commitment to sustainable peace that benefits all sectors of society.
The ambassador further articulated St. Kitts and Nevis's dedication to gender-inclusive policies within hemispheric security frameworks.
As we continue to build hemispheric security systems rooted in democracy, equity, and human dignity, we have a duty to ensure that the voices of women are not only heard, but empowered in decision-making processes, operational roles, and institutional leadership.
Notably, Ambassador Henry Martin expressed pride in the leadership role St. Kitts and Nevis currently holds within the OAS Committee of Hemispheric Security, which she chairs. She revealed that the committee's leadership is
stewarded entirely by a team of dedicated female diplomats from across the subregions of the Americas, serving in the presidency and first, second, and third vice presidencies.
This configuration, she said, embodies the principle that inclusive and gender-sensitive leadership fortifies peace and security.
Let this day of commemoration renew our collective commitment to empowering women as agents of peace and disarmament, not just in recognition, but in actual policy, practice, and partnership.
Ambassador Henry Martin concluded, calling on member states to translate words of acknowledgement into concrete actions that elevate women's roles at every level of peace building and security operations. Her remarks during the OAS Permanent Council meeting resonate deeply with the continued global efforts to promote gender equality in peace and security sectors. They affirm St. Kitts and Nevis's leading role in championing women's empowerment within international diplomacy and hemispheric cooperation.
Plans are underway for the return of the Nevis Culturama Festival, particularly to celebrate its 51st anniversary. Nevis Culturama, dubbed the Caribbean's greatest summerlime, traditionally includes parades through the capital, folklore, juve jump-up, calypso, pageants, a food fair, live band music, and food and drink stalls around the central performance areas. However, the various activities would not be possible without the collaboration of a dedicated group of individuals who take on specific roles to make the festival a big deal. The Culturama 51 C51 committee includes Chairperson Swain Evelyn, Bernell Hanley, Chair of Finance, Gates and Accreditation, Warren Movin, Chair of Senior Kaisel Contest, Anthony Gager, Chair of Culturama Fringe Activities, Moeva Liburd, Chair of Senior Parade, Michelle Liburd Rollins, Chair of Poets in the Square, Leanne Brown, Chair of the Mr. and Mr. Lented Youth Pageant, Santonia Mills, Chair of Junior Kaiso, Keisha Hobson and Jermaine Arthurton, Chairs of the Senior Pageants, Hurissa Martin and Asier Smithen, Chairs of the Food Fair, Patrick Howell, Chair of the Soca Monarch, Jerome Rollins, Chair of the Junior Parade, Dejano Liburd, Legal Rep, Gracelyn Hanley, Medical Rep, and Valentine Hodge, Police and Security Rep. The committee aspires to generate captivating ideas for each activity to ensure Nevis Culturama's visibility and relevance on the festival calendar worldwide. At the Culturama 51 media launch on May 20, Minister of Culture Eric Evelyn commended the committee's dedication and collaborative efforts in shaping the Culturama brand without pay.
As we venture into C51, I want at this time to just give commendation and kudos to the members of the committee who have seen it fit to come on board to serve this festival and to serve the people of Nevis. I want to welcome the new persons who are to the committee and of course to welcome back those who would have served previously. I don't think people really understand the magnitude of service that persons who serve on a committee like this is giving to the committee and to the island of Nevis. Planning and executing a festival like Culturama deserves a lot. And of course, our committee members gives a lot. And they're doing so without payment. It's voluntary service. And it is often sometimes disheartening sometimes when our committee members are giving 110%, but members of the committee find it best to criticize every activity that the committee plans. Now, the committee is working very tirelessly to ensure that we have a festival of class that we always do, bearing in mind that Culturama is indeed the Caribbean's greatest summer line, an experience like no other. And so I want to give kudos and commendation to the committee members for once again coming on board to give of your time, to give of your expertise, wholeheartedly and voluntarily. Kudos and commendation to the committee members.
In addition, Minister Evelyn heralded the outstanding and unforgettable contributions of former Chairman Antonio Abernathy Liburd, who led the Culturama Committee for many years and ensured the festival's sustainability even through potentially difficult times.
I want at this time as well to give kudos and credit and commendation to the former chairman of the festival, Mr. Antonio Abernathy Liburd, who was indeed Mr. Culture himself. He knew the festival like the palm of his hands, and he would have given yeoman service to Culturama and to the island of Nevis. Abo, thank you for your extraordinary and exemplary service that you would have provided for many, many years to Culturama.
Minister Evelyn also expressed pleasure that plans for Culturama 51 were moving in the right direction with a strong and critical involvement of the corporate community.
I'm sure we will all recognize, those of us in the committee and those of us in the Nevis Island administration, that Culturama is an expensive venture. And it is a venture that has been taken on by the Nevis Island administration over the years. It is indeed an expensive venture. And we often solicit the support of our corporate community. And our corporate community have always been there to support us. And we are eternally grateful for that. And so I'm delighted, I'm happy to see numerous members of the corporate community here today. They'll be presenting some symbolic checks, and we are indeed happy to have you. It's always good to have partners to execute a festival like Culturama. Sponsors, thank you so very much.
The 2025 celebration follows the milestone Culturama 50, where significant upgrades were made to the cultural village and complex, and expanding international engagement and marketing efforts were executed. However, Chairperson Swain Evelyn acknowledged that Culturama 51 would not have the same grandeur as the 50th celebration, but shared that efforts were being made to make the 51st celebration memorable and exciting for all.
Although C51 will not adopt the same grandeur as C50. We are making every effort to bring a high-quality experience that will make you jump, whine, laugh, and fret while enjoying excellent Nivision dishes and indulging in our refreshing drinks.
In the ongoing battle against financial scams in the Eastern Caribbean, understanding the telltale signs of fraudulent schemes and knowing how to respond can make a critical difference. Alusha Faisal, CEO of the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission, recently discussed these crucial aspects in an episode of ECCB Connects, aiming to equip the public with practical knowledge to avoid victimization. Financial scams often share common characteristics that should alert potential investors. According to Faisal, scams promise returns that are too good to be true, with quick, high returns and little to no risks touted as assurances to victims. Additionally, unauthorized investment activities lacking proper licensing from the ECSRC or other recognized financial regulators are significant red flags. Verify, Faisal repeated emphatically, highlighting the necessity that even offers from trusted friends or family require scrutiny.
Like I said, trust but verify. And even though the person is your very close bosom buddy, closest friend, your church member, or even your family members.
This verification should involve consulting the country's financial regulators or authorities, such as the ECSRC or the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. Scammers often use recruitment tactics to draw victims into pyramid schemes, as was the case with the notorious Creators Alliance scam, which attracted members with promises of monetary rewards in exchange for recruiting others and watching certain videos. Faisal distinguished pyramid schemes from Ponzi schemes by explaining that in pyramid schemes,
you have persons who are already involved being used to bring more persons on.
Scammers exploit the trust and relationships of victims through emotional manipulation, which can be bewildering when even well-informed individuals fall prey.
The persons who come to you are persons who you trust, persons who are in the same faith as you. They go to the same church. And that is why we say you really need to trust but verify.
Therefore, education about scam tactics is essential to empower individuals to ask the right questions and recognize warning signs. Regarding emerging trends, the rise of artificial intelligence has provided new tools for fraudsters who now deploy AI-generated images and voices to persuade victims. Traditional phishing remains prevalent, aiming to steal financial account information through deceptive emails and websites. Cryptocurrency scams, such as the collapse of FTX, underline the emerging risks in modern digital finance that the Caribbean region is grappling with. For those who realize they have been caught in a financial scam, swift action is imperative. Faisal advised victims to
go to the police because it is in most countries that type of activity is criminal or is criminalized,
and to report the crime to the financial intelligence units. Transparency and reporting are critical since many victims hesitate to come forward due to the embarrassment or fear of judgment. The ECSRC supports this process through an online complaint form facilitating confidential reporting and investigation. Ultimately, Faisal's message to the public is of caution and empowerment.
If you are approached by anyone offering you that type of opportunity to make money quickly, and they tell you that it's easy, and you see other persons participating, you should always trust but verify. Verify that the person come to use the resources that are available to you through your regulators, even the police department. You can go and, of course, educate yourself. Educate. We can't stress that enough.
Through the insights shared by the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission, individuals are urged to remain cautious, well-informed, and proactive to protect themselves and their communities from the growing threat of financial scams in the region.
In regional news,
Guyana opposition leader blasts government's response and walks out on debate on border. News source Guyana reports.
Opposition leader Aubrey Norton marched his fellow opposition members out of the National Assembly after launching a blistering attack on the Guyana government over its handling of the Guyana-Venezuela border controversy. The government was hopeful that it would get the support of the opposition, for its motion which sought to denounce Venezuela's planned election for the Essequibo this weekend. But Mr. Norton said the government has moved away from a long-standing practice of including the opposition to issue joint statements and having an input on the motion before it is laid in the National Assembly once it regards to Venezuela. He said the opposition will not support the motion in its current form and wants the government to go back to the table.
As an opposition, we have consistently supported the government on the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy. And we continue to be supportive of the cause. We have said the arbitral award is final. We have said that before. Now that when you finish airing off yourself, let me say this to you. We continue to support the case. We continue to protect our sovereignty and territorial integrity, but we cannot support a government that continues to disrespect the people of Guyana.
Mr. Norton said at minimum the motion falls short of addressing some key issues. He said there should have been clauses which clearly point out that Venezuela once accepted the arbitral award and even printed stamps which show Essequibo was part of Guyana's territory. The opposition leader also said the omission of those and other pieces of information from the motion weakened it and left Guyanese less informed.
As a government, you need to instill hope in the people of Guyana. Nothing that has been said today instills hope. You come over as a hopeless bunch depending on the ICJ. We support the movement to the ICJ, but we are well aware that Venezuela doesn't honor agreements, and therefore you should have already been outlining your strategy as to what Guyanese need to do after the pronouncement.
The opposition leader also said the opposition remains unshaken in its position and condemns the Venezuelan plan to hold the elections over this weekend. Mr. Norton said the government's lack of action cannot go unnoticed. He said with Venezuela's sham election plan, the Guyana government has not launched any campaign here to counter Venezuela and to bring comfort to the indigenous communities. He concluded that Guyana's stance appears to be its heavy reliance on the International Court of Justice. Norton said while the opposition fully supports the ICJ process, it is well known that Venezuela has no respect for the processes there. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mark Phillips attacked the opposition leader for his position and said it was an unpatriotic stance.
We've just had a perfect example of a shameful demonstration of patriotism. A most unpatriotic address, not to this house only, but to the people of Guyana, by one who supposedly is remunerated to perform the duties of leader of the opposition in this house. Mr. Speaker, a house divided cannot stand. And what we had there was a perfect example of an attempt to divide the people of Guyana.
The opposition has complained about not being regularly briefed on the border controversy and the latest developments, and has also accused the government of ignoring its calls for meetings of the National Assembly's Foreign Relations Committee to discuss and address the situation with Venezuela.
Trinidad and Tobago president calls for progressive laws. Triple T Live Online has the details.
The 13th Republican Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago was officially opened with a ceremonial sitting of both houses. President Christine Kangaloo, in addressing members of both houses of Parliament, reflected on the significance of the moment and outlined key expectations for the new legislative term. The President called on the Parliament to ensure that road safety remains a legislative priority, referencing the devastating loss of her own siblings in road traffic accidents, as she made a call for Parliament to reconsider the removal of the demerits points system.
The merit point systems in general have the goal of safeguarding road users. Road accidents cause death and disabilities. They also cause unbearable mental anguish and long-lasting trauma. Sadly, many of us here today have felt this anguish and still live with this trauma. I therefore plead with Parliament that whatever is done in this area, Parliament commits to ensuring enhanced safety on our nation's roads and to reducing road fatalities and related injuries.
2 weeks ago, Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar revealed that government had intentions to remove such a system, saying it had been a call by citizens because of its harsh penalties to motorists. Turning to national security, the president made an appeal for bipartisan unity in tackling one of the country's most pressing issues, crime.
I renew that call today with even greater urgency, but with greater hope in light of the initial signals from the leadership of both the government and the opposition that we might well be at the start of a parliament in which there is the chance of more meaningful collaboration than before.
President Kangaloo also identified several areas where she believes the parliament can lead with legislative innovation, starting with artificial intelligence.
The short point is that with government sensitivity to the importance of artificial intelligence, Parliament has an opportunity, and it might well only be a short one, to get out in front of artificial intelligence in a way that we did not do in respect of social media, and arrange for the regulation of AI technology in such a way as will maximize its benefits and minimize its risks to citizens' well-being.
Another area highlighted was the need for enduring powers of attorney to ease the burden on families of those living with Alzheimer's and other cognitive conditions.
Under our current laws, a power of attorney becomes ineffective when its giver ceases to be mentally competent. An enduring power of attorney will continue to be effective when the donor begins to lose mental capacity. Legislation which establishes the efficacy of an enduring power of attorney will bring enormous relief to thousands of citizens.
The president also urged lawmakers not to delay in passing long overdue legislation to protect the rights of persons with disabilities. As she said, if a truly inclusive society is to be built, laws that protect the rights of persons with disabilities must be included. As it pertains to the service commissions, President Kangaloo said there is a need for modernization as there is a slow pace of appointments, particularly in the education sector. Mahalia Joseph Wharton, TTT News.
We now bring you these international reports.
Harvard is America's oldest and wealthiest university. It has students enrolled from over 200 different countries. There are more than 8,000 international students and scholars at Harvard. Foreign enrollment at America's oldest university has increased by nearly 20% in the past 15 years. Abdullah Shahid Sial is co-president of the Harvard student body. He's an international student from Pakistan, joins us from Kyoto in Japan. Good to have you with us. So first of all, how easy will it be for students to transfer? They're being told simply transfer to another university. Is that something which is easy to do?
So first of all, thank you so much for having me. At this time, transfer windows for most colleges, not just in the US, but across the world, have already closed. So in this case, if students are forced to transfer, this will be something which Harvard will have to directly intervene for. And colleges outside will also have to change their policies accordingly if this is to be processed. So what we're looking at right now is perhaps gap years for so many, of massive stoppage in plans for thousands and thousands of students who happen to, again, be the best in their own respective countries. So no, it's not a process which everyone is taking lightly, or no one actually knows how it's going to follow through.
So I think you're facing this on a personal level. What are people like you going to do? Can you stay in the US for a gap year if you're not enrolled in another university? Is any of this even clear for you?
Yeah, again, that's a great point. So if I'm not enrolled in a university, then I don't have a valid legal status in the US, so I can't stick in the country at all. For me, for me to have a valid F1 visa, which is our student visa, I need to be, I think I need to enroll in a minimum of 3 courses, which obviously, if I'm not allowed into Harvard, then I obviously can't do any of that. So I can't stick in the US. All international students will have to go back to their respective countries, or a country which is not the US.
What is, even if some students are lucky enough to be able to get in somewhere else, this is going to impact their ability to get an internship, right? Which is something which is attached to the visa for the original university, Harvard, which they were enrolled at.
Yeah. So usually, if you're enrolled in at a college in the US, then during the summer break, students are allowed to work in the US. They have something called the CPT, which allows them to work over the summer. But obviously, if when the SCVP status, which is the status which allows Harvard to enroll international students, when that is revoked for the university itself, it will automatically result in all of those individual visas getting revoked and all those students not having a legal status. So as we speak, I have so many friends at Harvard right now who just generally don't know what to do. They're in the country. They're not sure if they should be taking domestic flights or not. They're not sure if they should be flying back home for the break or not. People who are flying into the US for their internship, they're not sure if they should be taking that flight, or even if they'll be let in or detained at an airport when they finally enter the country. And these are some very, very real problems faced by literally 18 and 19-year-olds who again have no family in the US. They're perhaps in most cases the first people who are coming from their families to come to the US, and now it's a situation which they have to navigate, which many lawyers would fear to put their feet in.
This is part of a clampdown on what authorities see as anti-Americanism. Tell us how that term, is it clear to you what definition authorities are going by in determining whether a foreign student has been engaged in something that's deemed, that they consider to be anti-American? You know, and how confusing that must be in a country that long prides itself and calls itself land of the free.
No, that's a fantastic question. And yeah, the new letter just shed light on how the language has changed from not just anti-Semitism, but now to quote-unquote anti-Americanism as well. And just to repeat what you said, anti-Americanism is a term which perhaps only the Trump administration knows. Is it against the fundamental values of America, or is it something which is against the Trump administration in general? Either way, universities in general, and especially universities in the United States, have always been hubs of critical thought. And when you're a hub of critical thought, then automatically it happens to be a place which embraces dissent really well. What we have seen right now with this new introduction of quote-unquote anti-Americanism is it's like a literal crackdown on any form of dissent, which is against the Trump administration. Me deciding to speak right now, guys, a big personal risk, because this can be characterized, this interview, as quote-unquote anti-American, even though it's just me taking a stance against what this particular White House administration is doing. And as a consequence, so many of these incredibly, incredibly smart people who, again, represent the absolute best of their own respective countries are extremely scared to speak up or to raise their voices. If they've given an interview in the past to any form of press, even if it doesn't have anything to do with politics, I have so many of my peers who in a state of havoc, are calling up these newspapers that, can we please redact our name, because they don't want their names attached to anything which is even remotely considered political. And this is the state which the new administration has put these incredibly smart individuals in. It's a massive distraction. More than that, these students are being treated in an extremely dehumanizing and a demeaning manner, because they're being thrown from one side to the other, from the Trump administration, the Harvard administration, being used as negotiating tools in a war which they never signed up for. And I think that level of dehumanization just makes people not feel welcome anymore. And we have seen very, very, very real consequences of that. So even if Trump stops right now with everything that he's doing, a very real damage has already been caused, and universities will take years and years to build. They will have to take years and years to build the trust that they have lost right now, to finally be able to get all of the best talent in the world back into the US again.
Iran has accelerated its nuclear program. The so-called breakout time, at which point Iran will have produced enough weapons-grade uranium for a bomb, is close to zero, perhaps a matter of weeks. Whether they have the technical know-how to develop a bomb is another question. The IAEA, which inspects the declared enrichment sites, one of them an underground facility in Natanz, the other buried inside a mountain at Fordow, do not have the access they once had. There is a lot the international community does not know about Iran's intentions, all of which makes negotiations in Rome, the fifth round of talks between the White House and Iran, all the more critical. The US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is there in Italy with orders to seal a diplomatic solution which Donald Trump believes is in reach.
I want to make a deal with Iran. I want to do something if it's possible. But for that to happen, it must stop sponsoring terror, halt its bloody proxy wars, and permanently and verifiably cease its pursuit of nuclear weapons. They cannot have a nuclear weapon.
The Israelis think it's all futile. In fact, some months ago, the Defense Minister, Israel Katz, said he thought Iran was more exposed than ever to an attack on its nuclear facilities. A series of reports based on leaked US intelligence suggests the Israeli Air Force is now well advanced in those plans, with or without US backing. Iran's defense minister warned that Tehran will not hesitate to retaliate were they to come under attack. The White House seems sufficiently concerned that Donald Trump raised this with Benjamin Netanyahu when they spoke following the murder of the two Israeli diplomats in Washington. Hamid Reza Azizi is an Iran analyst. He gave us his view of the talks.
I think as we proceed with the negotiations and now we enter the fifth round, it's getting more and more complicated. We saw how tense the whole issue was over the past few days, and the statements coming from both sides, the red lines that both Donald Trump, the U.S. side, and also Ayatollah Khamenei, the Iranian supreme leader, tried to depict. All this means that now talks have entered into a very serious stage. On one hand, the very fact that they are still, committed to this diplomatic path could be a good sign. But then the core issue seems to be the Iranian ability to enrich uranium, which some U.S. officials, especially Special Envoy Witkoff, have said that it is the red line. And on the other side, Ayatollah Khamenei has, completely ruled out the possibility of stopping enriching uranium within the Iranian territory.
Yeah, as you suggest, so often it comes to the internal conversation within Iran. It's the doves versus the hawks. And it's the signalling that we get from the supreme leader that we have to watch. Does he want to deal?
If he didn't want to deal, I think the Iranian delegation wouldn't have been engaged in the negotiations, and they wouldn't have been in Rome for a new round. So what we have seen over the past few months, particularly since February, when Khamenei first ruled out negotiations, and he basically said that it is not honorable, not logical to talk, and then he allowed this. It seems that there seems to be sort of a division of labor. So at the executive level, of course, the administration, the foreign ministry in this case, is in charge of kind of actual negotiation and diplomatic engagement. But as everybody, especially the United States administration, knows that it is in the end a decision of the supreme leader. He comes in from time to time to clarify the red lines in order, in his view, to basically, give enough material to bargain, and at the same time, basically close the door to any sort of, unwanted compromise that actually the more moderate administration might be willing to accept, but not Khamenei himself.
U.S. stocks fell on Friday, notching a weekly loss, with the Dow and S&P 500 each dropping more than 0.6%, and the Nasdaq shedding 1%. President Donald Trump opened a new front in global trade tensions by recommending 50% tariffs on European goods and warned Apple it could face potential 25% tariffs on foreign-made iPhones sold to U.S. customers. While this unleashed a fresh wave of market uncertainty, stocks clawed back from steeper losses earlier in the session. Jason Brown, president of Alexis Investment Partners, sees this as a sign that investors are adjusting to the new normal of Trump's tough trade talk.
So I think given that backdrop, being almost back to flat and almost kind of hitting flat a few times throughout the day, it's almost positive and so forth. I mean, it's pretty high hurdles. And I think what it partly tells us is that the market is doing a pretty good job of digesting this sort of new world we're in terms of how Trump negotiates, uses tariffs, and is just sort of taking things a little bit in stride more than certainly they were a month ago.
Trump's Apple threat pushed shares of the tech giant down 3%. The 6 other Magnificent Seven stocks also closed lower. Among other movers, Deckers Outdoor slumped nearly 20% after the maker of UGG boots forecast first-quarter net sales below estimates and said it would not provide annual targets due to tariff-led macroeconomic uncertainty. Sportswear maker Nike dropped more than 2%. And shares of Workday slumped 12.5% after the software company forecast second-quarter subscription revenue in line with Wall Street expectations, anticipating weakening client spending on its product.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were:
St. Kitts and Nevis ambassador highlights women's crucial role in peace and disarmament at OAS meeting. Warning signs of financial scams and steps to take if you are caught.
Swain Evelyn heads the Culturama 51 committee. Antonio Abernathy Liburd lauded for his sterling contributions.
Guyana opposition leader blasts government's response and walks out on debate on border. Trinidad and Tobago president calls for progressive laws. Internationally, Harvard sees rise in foreign enrollment with international students from over 200 countries.
Thank you for listening.